Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. I'm Eric Bramlett. I'm joined by Tim Sutherland, who needs to scoot over just a little bit. You're making me a little nervous. That's the wrong way.
Oh.
There you go. I just want this shot to be a good shot.
Well, and I was blocking Bill.
You were blocking Bill.
I'm sorry, Bill.
And his blind spot. All right. Well, you know what? Let's just say this. We're excited about Christmas. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter that it's just the 1st of September when we're recording this.
Yes, day after Labor Day.
The day after Labor Day, which means that probably the Christmas decorations are already out at many of the stores, trying to convince you to get that done early and all that good stuff. So I'm sure that that's true, and we don't need to necessarily research that to prove it. And so it's as good a time as any to communicate and brainstorm and think about what happens for Christmas. As we know, Christmas is just one of those times where people feel this bizarre urge that they can't explain to walk into church buildings. And we have a couple of options with that. We can either let them do it and just not really do anything different and see them at Easter, or we can create experiences that would be captivating enough and align ourselves with what God is trying to do in those hearts and minds to be able to create a change. And that maybe for the first time ever, that family, that dad, that mom, that kid is experiencing Christmas in a way that literally changes their life to where they can't go back to being a creaster. They need to be in community, and they need to follow Jesus. So that's definitely the goal. That's where we're headed. And this year we have a hook and a way of talking about Christmas that's really different. We've really not, as many times as we've told the Christmas story, this is the first time we've told it this way. So very excited about the colors of Christmas. And rather than, we'll just let that explain itself for the whole series, the colors of Christmas. Each week a different color. So let's start with week 1, blue.
Blue.
Talk to us about a blue Christmas.
Well, as I'm sure everybody who's watching this podcast is well aware, a lot of people struggle. Christmas is a difficult time of year for a lot of folks. It tends to be one of those feast or famine things. You either are somebody who really, really loves it or really, really struggles. We're all familiar with the old Elvis song, Blue Christmas. You know, in that situation, Elvis is singing on behalf of lonely people. So some people are extra lonely. There are people who are grieving at Christmas, and maybe it's the first Christmas since mom or dad or spouse died, or since they got divorced, or since they moved away from home. So for a lot of people, it's a time of loneliness or grief. For a lot of people, it's blue because they're under such enormous stress. I mean, there's obviously busyness stress and financial stress, tremendous stress for people who are unemployed because, you know, how am I going to pay? Well, people who are employed are going, how am I going to pay for all this? There's relational stress. You know, you have to be around people that you may not really enjoy that much, or you might have significant animosity for. And then, of course, there's those people whose relationships are struggling, and we always say it, but there's always somebody out there who's going, okay, I'm going to, end this marriage, and we'll tell the kids after Christmas. And so it's, pretty ominous.
And that is a gross scenario. And it's even worse when you've actually seen it happen. I mean, it's a generic, it's like a part of a TV movie, we'll tell the kids after Christmas. But when you've actually seen it happen and seen somebody go to the logical conclusion that they're going to sort of walk through this next month, I mean, it's really, really gross. Yeah. It's pretty blue.
Yeah, and it is not just for the person that's going to be happening to, but for the person who's planning on doing it. I mean, they might seem sort of villainous to us, but I unfortunately have been through that on the other end of it, and I know that it's a huge, heavy burden to bear, And so we want to be sensitive to folks who are struggling this time of year with Blue Christmas. We got a great text, man. The Isaiah 9 just jumped out at me. You know, everybody's familiar with Isaiah 9 in terms of, you know, for unto us a child is born, you know, handles Messiah, basically gets its text from here, its lyrics from here. But if you look at verse 1 of Isaiah 9, it says there'll be no more gloom for those who were in distress. And the people who are walking in darkness have seen a great light. And so you've got this wonderful contrast in Isaiah 9 between gloom and light. And even though it doesn't say that the gloom is blue, I mean, what word is closer to describe a blue Christmas than the word gloom? You know,
I can think of one.
Oh yeah, it's a great word, and it talks about this child is being born. He'll be Wonderful Counselor. Who'll be called Wonderful Counselor and Mighty God and Everlasting Father and Prince of Peace. So in this service, we're going to try and help people connect with that. How can Jesus be those things to me? How can he be my counselor? Counselor there doesn't mean like paid mental health professional. It means someone who gives me guidance and wisdom that is truly wonderful, that's amazing, that I never could have had myself. And it's a little confusing, you know, to call Jesus Everlasting Father, because we think of, oh, isn't he the Son? Well, Father there doesn't mean Father like literal Father. It means the person who provides for you and protects you and is there for you. And even the phrase Mighty God doesn't focus so much on Jesus' divinity there, but that he has might and power that is unsurpassed by any mortal. So it's like he has divine.
So it's like
power.
Thor,
yeah.
Thor kind of power.
Yeah,
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 right.
yeah.
Good.
Avengers echelon power, and of course Prince of Peace. Peace there doesn't just mean the absence of my strife and conflict. It means this person who is the bringer of the Hebrew. Shalom, you know, wholeness, goodness. So in this service, we're going to help people go from this place of blueness to going, okay, how can Jesus be the person who gives me guidance and gives me strength and becomes my protector and provider and the person who is the bringer of peace to my life? How can I actually do that? It's a wonderful thing about going, okay, how do we get from the baby in the manger to someone who is truly what I need to get me through this time? And that's what we're going to try and do in this service.
That's great. And it's by being so early in the month, you know, right at the 1st and 2nd of December for this year, you know, I think we have a huge opportunity to be able to kind of, you know, tackle this topic right away and really try to acknowledge for people who may not believe that we know what's going on.
Yeah.
I think that's, you know, it's an important way to start the series for sure.
And for those who aren't struggling this time of year, all these things about who Jesus is, it's going to be a big challenge weekend to say, don't just go through Christmas for you and yourself. Be on the lookout for people who are struggling. Try, you know, allow God to have you be kind of the incarnational presence of Jesus to somebody so that he can be someone's counselor and comforter and provider and strength and peace through you. It's for all the talk there is about giving this time of year, it is a unbelievably self-absorbed time for most of us. How do I construct this ultimate experience for me and people who are coming to my house? And we're not against that experience. We're looking to say, okay, how can you share that experience with somebody else? How can you include people who are blue and struggling and suffering or distress? How can you include them in all the wonderful things that you're so jazzed about? How can you be the presence of Christ to somebody who's having a blue Christmas?
And if you include them, just make sure that they don't ruin Christmas, right? I mean, come on.
Right. We want to include them, but we don't want to allow them to ruin.
Right.
Christmas.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's what Jesus will help us do.
Yes.
All right.
Jesus is way against ruining Christmas.
Generally speaking, yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to session 2, and this color of Christmas is white.
White.
White as snow.
Well, you know, you can't hear white and Christmas without thinking about the old song by
Bing Crosby?
Yes, Bing Crosby.
White Christmas?
White Christmas, you know, I'm dreaming. It may be the...
Written by?
Irving Berlin.
Yes. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Wow. That's good.
I pulled that one out of my Belshazzar.
Which is why he has to wear this.
That's right.
All right.
So you think about that, and it's, and there's this longing, and then and there's the whole idea of white Christmas. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, but I don't think that expresses a longing just for the prettiness of snow. I think we're going to be talking about the deep longing that we all have to be pure and clean and good. There's so much emphasis, I think, in Christian circles, and I think it's screwed up on Jesus as the person who saves you from the consequences of your sin. The punishment for your sin, the retribution you might otherwise face for your sin. He doesn't just do that. He wants to free you from the sin itself. He wants to clean you up. And even though we don't like to say, oh, I want to be pure, no, there's something in us that wants the things in us that are not as they should be, the things in us that are dark, the things in us that are not pretty, the things in us that are kind of ugly, to be cleansed of those things, to be removed, have those things removed from our lives. So we're looking again at Isaiah, where it talks about, where God says, come on, let's settle this. Though your sins are as scarlet, they can be made white as snow. And it's really, you shall be white as snow. You can be white as snow.
And I'm guessing that they didn't have a whole lot of contact with snow.
Well,
right? What was the topography like?
It had to be of just what you see on the mountains.
Right.
I mean, even in some place incredibly warm like Southern California, well into the summer, you look up on the mountains, especially you look at the Angeles Crest Mountains and Mount Wilson, and out that way, and you'll see snow. Well into the summer. So as you're picturing kind of a dry, arid place, imagine mountains in the distance that are capped in snow.
So don't imagine walking through Chicago after a snowstorm trying to sludge your way to work. That's not the kind of snow we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about off in the distance, white and pure and lovely.
Yeah, and maybe some people that had heard this prophecy had been up in the mountains and been to the snow, but everybody knew what snow was. Snow was this white, shining, beautiful stuff that's almost unattainable. It's up on the mountains, and there's this thing that God says. He says that we can be like that. Not that we will become sinless beings, but that we can become purified and we can become cleansed from our stuff. And you talk about people, especially who've been abused, will talk about that they feel dirty, even though they didn't do it, even though it wasn't their fault,
and even though they've moved on, and even though they maybe in some cases have even forgiven their accusers or the people who've done this to them. But it doesn't feel like it changes them all the way through.
And if somebody who has been the victim of somebody else's sin feels that way, how much more do us as the perpetrators of sin, not that we have done something that awful to somebody necessarily, but what does it mean throughout Scripture, there's this whole thing about being washed and cleansed. And this is a great weekend that we're going to challenge people, especially who are just going to hang around church because it's Christmas time, to look at their relationship with God. This is a great weekend to call people to faith and to make that decision to find their way back to God in Jesus. So I love that. I love that they're going to come to service and they're not going to get necessarily just a little warm, fuzzy, cozy sort of, oh, isn't Christmas nice? But they're going to go, hey, look, I can really be cleansed from the crap in my life. I can really be washed clean from the stuff that I feel like has put kind of smudges and spots on my soul. And so White Christmas is about being cleansed from our sin, not simply forgiven.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Great opportunity for baptism asks. Great opportunity for first-time commitments and crossing the line of faith. All right. Session 3, red.
Of course, we see red everywhere, from Santa's suit to Rudolph's nose to comic rule of 3 would be?
W.C. Fields' red cheeks from being so hammered.
Okay, there you go. There you have it. Rule of three. And 2 things you expect and 1 thing you maybe didn't expect.
Maybe didn't. I know I didn't.
That's
until
right.
I was saying it.
See how we do that? Anyhow, we're talking about red, and red is this color you see a lot at Christmas. Red, the psychologists will tell you, is the color of love. That's one of the reasons it's around a lot at Valentine's too. I'm really extra excited about this particular service because we're going to focus specifically on the love that we don't have for the people that we still have to give to and be around this time of year. And we've all got them. Right now, you are already thinking, when I say that person you have to buy something for that you don't want to, someone comes to mind.
My brother. Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that out loud. I'm sorry. We'll fix that in the mix.
Yeah.
We'll edit that.
You'll edit that part out.
We'll edit that part
because we wouldn't. It would be awful.
It would be horrible if that stayed in. So we'll pretend like we didn't say it and we'll go on.
Like your...
Anyone, really. I mean, it could be anyone.
Who do you have to buy for that you really, if it came right down to it, don't mention their name, but what's the relationship that you go, you know what, if I could just not buy for that person, it wouldn't break my heart.
It would probably be my brother. Oh, I did it again. Gosh, on it. All right, well, you know what, I apologize.
If you were going to buy for somebody that if you were going to have to not buy for somebody that you have to buy for every year, what kind of person might that be that you would not buy for?
I just don't know at this point. I'd have to spend some more time thinking about it.
Perhaps I should field this one.
Maybe. Why don't you go ahead?
For me, it's my boss. Oh, I'm sorry. Think about it. Maybe it's your boss. Maybe you're the boss, and there's that person in your office who works against you and stabs you in the back and wants your job, but you still got to get them something because bosses get their employees something. Maybe it's somebody in the family that has hurt you or wronged you, or somebody, or that person, who always gives you something. They like re-gift something, and you buy them something nice.
Well, and I think, it's just any time, especially in families, you have huge conflicts that take place throughout the year, and then you're somehow expected to have to just sort of put those on a timeout and experience some sort of warmness and happy thing, and it can be really frustrating. I'm not
sure you're supposed to experience as much as you're supposed to act
like you are. Well, I think the assumption is you're either acting like it or you've gotten past the conflict.
Right.
And I think there's probably a place in the middle which says, which is more like love your enemies, figure out what it looks like to love them the way Jesus wants us to, even if this conflict isn't resolved.
So this service is going to be about, instead of just going through the motions with the people that you either don't have a lot of strong feeling for positively, or the people that you do have a lot of strong feeling for negatively, in terms of being towards them, whether it's gift giving or seeing them at parties or having them around your house, how do I find it within myself to not fake it and not just go through the motions? And we really believe that God's love is something that can be poured out in our hearts. I love that verse from Romans that talks about God's love being poured out in our hearts. And really, that when it comes down to it, when you love somebody that you have good feelings for, it's wonderful and enjoyable. But the kind of love that we all need God to put in us is the kind of love when we don't feel it.
Yeah, and we need it anyway, but it's particularly in need during those times where you're trying to make sense of that. Yeah,
and I love it that we're doing this service fairly close. It's like halfway. How many shopping days left?
Right. So 10 or 9.
Yeah, there's like 9 or 10 shopping days left till Christmas. And you know what you do when you don't want to buy somebody a present?
put it off.
Yeah, that's not the first person I go out and buy for. That's the person that I run to Jewel for on the 23rd, and and hope they still have something left. And so it's not just about the gift giving, but it really is very practical. Going, okay, how can this be a different Christmas for me because of my relationship with God, where God is transforming me more and more into a person who doesn't only love when I feel like it, who knows how to love like he loves, which is that he can love in spite of all the reasons that he has not to, and despite all the barriers that there are. I think this is really exciting. I don't think we've ever done a service particularly on how do I give gifts differently and interact differently at Christmas parties or at family gatherings, because I know Jesus. And so red is the color of love, and this is going to be all about finding love for the people that we feel no love for in this particular time of year.
I dig it. All right, closing out prior to Christmas Eve.
Yes.
Session 4, right on the heels of Christmas Eve. We're talking about green. Green.
Yes.
Green is a color.
Green is obviously a color you see a lot at Christmas, with Christmas trees and Christmas, garlands and the suits that the elves wear and that kind of thing.
And the paper plates.
And paper plates, yes.
Lots of paper plates.
Yeah. You don't see green paper plates usually, other than St. Patrick's Day. And then you don't see them at all because of all the green beer.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't either.
Blocked it out.
I blocked it out. And so the green is a color of newness, new life, renewal. So in this service, we're going to ask people to look at the areas of their life and go, okay, where do I need newness? Where do I need Jesus' Spirit to renew me or to renew something in my life? For a lot of people, it will be the renewal of a relationship. For a lot of people, it will be the renewal of hope. For other people, it will be the renewal of something that has just become bleak to them, like their dreams for their career or their dreams for their future. This is a great weekend for people who feel like, oh yeah, it's Christmas, but the truth is I'm smiling on the outside, but inside I feel like some things are just impossible. And Jesus doesn't come to just show us that God loves us. Jesus comes to make all things new. He comes to renew things. And I love that verse. We use it a lot, but we're going to keep using it a lot, where it talks about, if anybody's in Christ, the old is gone, the new has come. They're a new creation. So we're going to be talking about Jesus' power to renew anything and everything in our life that needs renewing, and that he's up to not just renewing us, but that he's in the process that he came to the world to renew and create the whole world, to recreate the whole world anew, to be like it was in the beginning and like it was meant to be from the beginning. So we're going to be talking all about new and renewal. Think new and renewal.
Yeah, and while you don't necessarily have to stay there very long, I mean, the fact that Jesus showed up as a baby, that I mean, a newborn, obviously God did not have to do it that way.
Yeah.
And so there's meaning to be found in that decision. Yeah. For God to send Jesus as a baby to live an entire brand new life without sin. Yeah. Pretty impressive. Yep. Pretty impressive stuff. Well, that's going to be great and get us right to the place that we want to be for Christmas Eve. Now, a couple of things about Christmas Eve. We usually tend to sort of identify a particular theme that we want to head toward with regards to Christmas Eve that might be just a little bit different than the overall series, but definitely ties people in to where we're headed. I think, and we've seen experience, with other churches who've done series that are similar to this, you can really have fun with these colors. Mm-hmm. You can have fun with themed, weekend stuff, the snacks and stuff that are in the same color as what we're talking about today. Clothing, for the onstage band members with the colors. When it comes to Christmas Eve, we want to sort of, step away a little bit from some of the way in which that's a hook and look instead to this particular topic for Christmas Eve. So while it fits within the construct of the Colors of Christmas series, our Christmas Eve weekend services are not necessarily trying to identify a particular color, but rather we're going with the title of Christmas Presents. And really, if you look at sort of all of this stuff that has been, that Christmas is all about, that if you were going to say what's the one thing Christmas is about, it's potentially about this Christmas presents, this idea of who Jesus was and who he was in relation to the people who were coming upon him for the first time. So talk to us a little bit about Christmas presents.
Yeah. It's we're going to be looking at a text that we've never, ever in the history of our church talked about at Christmas. And I am kind of befuddled as to how we've not come upon this one, but it came about as part of this Colors of Christmas series, and it's the prophecy about the wise men. Everybody knows the story of the wise men coming, but
Belshazzar knows it.
Yes, he knows it well.
He's very familiar.
He was it.
What's the story?
He lived it.
Yes.
It was a fulfillment of prophecy, though, because we have to understand that originally, when wise men showed up, these mysterious strangers from foreign lands showed up to worship Jesus, to worship the King of the Jews, that would have been completely mind-blowing to the Jews. Because they saw God's favor and God's blessing as something exclusively for them, the good, religious, Torah-abiding, God's chosen people.
Right.
And yet these strangers from really who knows where just seem to come out of nowhere. You really got to understand, we see them as regal and noble, but the Jews would have saw them as pagans. Rich pagans, but pagans nonetheless. And so there's this mysterious thing that the birth of this Christ child starts bringing people from foreign countries to the land that Jesus lives in, to this group of people who before saw themselves as kind of the exclusive beneficiaries of God's blessing and God's grace. And so there is this thing, this wonderful mystery that in Jesus, God is reaching out and trying to draw every single person to him. So in this series, we're going to try and help, especially that person who's only comes to Christmas Eve service, right? There's people who would never come to Easter service who would always come to Christmas Eve service.
Right.
And especially to go, look, do you see that God's reaching out to you? That God is near to you and God is beckoning to you. Some of them are going to go like, oh yeah, I know some stuff's happening and I knew somebody was trying to tell me something. And we're going to go, yeah, you're right. Somebody was trying to tell you something in your life right now through good things, bad things, or a mixture of both. And it's Jesus. For other people, they're not really aware and attuned to their spiritual journey, but we still believe God's searching for them and God is pursuing them. And we're going to remind every single person that they are being pursued by God in Jesus, and that this is not about them being pursued to become part of the religious or to become part of that it's about weekly church attendance or being a certain kind of person that looks the part of somebody who's Christian or spiritual or whatever. This is this thing this wonderful thing that God is pursuing every single person. So we're going to talk to people a lot about where are you on your spiritual journey? Do you realize that just as God reached out to those wise men wherever they came from, hundreds, maybe thousands of miles they came, that he had reached out to them through their interest in astrology. That's what he used to draw them to himself. And what's awesome is when they saw him, they had some sense of who he was. And I wouldn't be someone who believes that because they worship Jesus that they realized that he was God or the Son of God, but they knew something was there. And the gifts they gave him, the gold and the frankincense and the myrrh, those are gifts of incredible value and esteem and honor, and they have such very, very, very heavy redemptive and spiritual overtones to them that even though they probably didn't have personal faith in Jesus, I think that's probably safe to say, there was still something in that their spiritual radar is going off. They can't just go, oh, look, there he is. Okay, let's head home. Mm-hmm. And then, called for their camels. They had to worship. And I think there's this strong theme in this service of going, man, that thing that's pulling on you, you may not know what to call it, but it's God. That restlessness in your soul, that sense of, like the old U2 song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. That emptiness that I know I can't fill. That God's beckoning to you and calling him to yourself. And I'm really excited. And that it's the presence of God. And in this case, God as Jesus incarnate in the manger, that he's calling you to himself. And so for people who have already found their way back to God in Jesus, it's this reminder that we didn't find him. He found us. Mm-hmm. We didn't find our way in the sense of us figuring it out. We found our way back to God because he was looking for us and he came for us. And so this is a tremendous time to go, man, you don't have to search for God and hope to find him, because he's searched for you and he's found you in Jesus. So it's either a recognition of that or a celebration of that. I think it's going to be tremendous.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really excited about that, and I love the idea of being able to point to this wise man story, know that it's a fulfillment of Scripture, and know that it creates a scenario so that 35, 40 years later, Peter can talk about, hey, this is for everybody.
Yeah.
We are all the children of God. Paul can reiterate that. Yeah. That this is Christmas presents means that God's on the move and that God is after us. Yeah.
And he wants every single person to experience his presence in their life. That it's just like Sandals, Jamaica. It's all inclusive. Michael Scott reference, Sandals, Jamaica.
It is just like that. And I think...
Wait, didn't he go to Sandals, Jamaica secretly with his boss Jan during the Christmas holiday?
I think that's possible.
I think that might have been the time of the show.
He could not share it.
Yes.
As I recall. Just like you could not reference it right now. So on that note, I'm looking forward to a getaway vacation in the end of December.
Yeah. Sorry to take you to the beach.
Need one.
But but that's the point is going, man, you know what? God is, there's that pretty consistent rap on Christianity that it's exclusive. No. Far more. Jesus is all inclusive. He wouldn't, and to him, it isn't the good people and the pagans. It's that, hey, we're all pagans, and we need him, and he comes to us, and he comes to look for us and to find us. And when he is searching for us and trying to find us, then we can find him.
Yeah, and if that doesn't get you into the Christmas spirit, well then, come on.
Yeah.
You may not have a pulse.
That's right.
All right, well, it's going to be a great series. Just from a note-taking, bookkeeping standpoint, it doesn't conclude the month of December, but it does conclude the Colors of Christmas series.
Yes.
Because at the end of the month of December, 29-30, we have a standalone called Maybe Next Year. And so you'll get more information about that in a future podcast and future communications.
Maybe next podcast.
Maybe next podcast. You just never know. I have a feeling if it's a 1 weeker and we're doing it, it might be a little bit shorter. So that's something to look forward to.
There you go.
Unless we decide we're going to try to make them, we could probably stretch it out. I have a feeling we'd be able to between the two of us.
I officially resent that, Eric.
No, that's both of us.
Oh, you said between the two of us.
Yeah, no, I genuinely was not trying to create a scenario that suggested that only one of us has the propensity to go along. Oh, okay. No, I have that as well. I just don't have nearly as many forums to demonstrate it. And on that note, I think we're done. So thank you very much. This is Tim Sutherland. I'm Eric Bramlett, and thanks so much for joining the Big Idea Podcast. Looking forward to all the fantastic things we're going to do this Christmas, being in step with God's Spirit to help people find their way back to God. So long, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.